Hello everyone and welcome to Cheshire Forum. So today we've got our three councillors, Ben, Katrina and Paul. And we've also got Daisy and Alex, who are our sustainability representatives too.
Should have counted them. Give it away.
So yeah, we'll let you do your little presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. This video, this is primarily for you watching here today, but the people in the audience, yeah, you matter as well. Owners, sustainability officers, and you chaps. But hello, thanks for coming. Really, I appreciate it. But look, this is for you who are watching right now. You probably know the Garden Quarter. What is it? The Garden Quarter is the most immediate residential area to the University of Chester's. It's not Parkgate Road campus anymore. What's it called? Exton Road campus. Back in my day when I was at Chester, it was Parkgate Road campus. Do you still call it campus as well?
Yeah, I think they're trying to change that.
Are they trying to change that? Oh, snobbery, eh? There we go. Anyway, you'll cut that out. So look, the Garden Quarter is practically half permanent resident, half student, okay? People living alongside with each other. Most of the time we get on, the Garden Quarter has a big sense of community. It has a lot of voluntary groups, has a lot of charities, has some successful cafes. It's had a long history of good business and a long history of students as well. And over that time, because the more and more of us are bringing cars into the Garden Quarter, things are becoming a little bit, it would be wrong to say it's crowded, but it would be wrong to say everyone's happy about the situation in the Garden Quarter. Some people want change, and as councillors, our residents are our bosses, which includes students who live here more permanently, who vote here as well, and we listen to them, and what they want is change in the Garden Quarter. So we've been talking with officers, petitioning them to think the Garden Quarter is a unique part of Chester, half student, half permanent resident, and with that comes problems such as waste recycling, a lack of deference to recycling, to putting the bins out on the right days. You know those houses exist, we know those houses exist. And parking as well, leaving a car all year round. Is that really a conducive use of a car park space? You have every right to do it, but is that a really conducive use of a car park space in the Garden Quarter? That is what we're going to be talking about today. So I've done a presentation, as you can see. I hope you can see it on the screen. Yeah. Our mantra is always action, not words, because too many politicians talk and do nothing. Behind this podium, I'm gonna behind this politician's podium or next to it, I'm going to show you a few things. But I gave this presentation here that you're going to see on the screen to Garden Quarter residents a few weeks back. We've met with residents in the Garden Quarter in June. Around about 100 turned up. We met with them in November, about 80 turned up, and then we met with them again, about 50 turned up. That's not all the residents of the Garden Quarter. The Garden Quarter is frankly about 2,000 people. That is who we are trying to speak to with this proposal. But the Garden Quarter is 2,000 households. No, not 2,000 people, sorry. 5,000 people and 2,000 households, okay? And half of them around about student, okay? Another thing to bear in mind as well is the number of people who have cars in the Garden Quarter. Around about a fifth of them, a fifth of them have 2 cars or more, but the plurality have 1 car or less, 1 car or none. 38% of residents in the Garden Quarter have no cars, 41% have 1 car, okay, and that's household. So if you're a student and you live in a property that's like 12 Walpole Street, that's where I lived back in the uni days, that's 1 household. But if it's 12A Walpole Street and 12B Walpole Street, that's 2 households. So I hope you understand what I mean there. That's the Garden Quarter, half student, few cars. And it's half transient because you have students living here a few years. I'm one of the students who stayed on. I hope many of you living here and watching today stay on in the city of Chester, but people move on. Nevertheless, the Garden Quarter has a pretty strong community vibe. When we poll people in the GQ, strong and vibrant place in Chester, but it has a unique parking problem. 6 in 10 of the people polled says it has a unique parking problem. How do you feel about parking? Most of us are negative. How do you feel about street cleanliness? More of us are negative. How do you feel about waste and recycling? Plurality, almost a majority, are negative. How do you feel about the number of HMOs? HMOs are the ones where you have multiple people in one house from a different household. So frankly, that's a lot of student houses. And to be honest with you, of the residents we polled, most don't feel particularly favourable about that. It might have something to do with the waste recycling, might have something to do with the boxes being left out all week round. It's not saying everyone, but you know it happens, I know it happens, and waste and recycling know it happens. All right. Now we're just going to talk about parking first before we go on to waste recycling. And parking is what you are going to have a vote on. We don't want to change anything in the garden quarter without resident involvement. We think, you should always have the final say. So from late September, start of October, there will be the equivalent of a referendum, a consultation, so to speak, that will go to every household that will be involved in our parking scheme that I'm going to bring up in a few moments' time. And you'll be able to say yes or no to it. That'll be all households from once you return to university. Because most residents believe most of the parking can be attributed to the number of HMOs. Most believe parking near my home is difficult to do. Most cannot find somewhere to park close to their home. This is residents, this is people who work the 9 to 5, this is the people who go out, who take their cars out to do the job they need to do. But most of us can find somewhere to park. And the vast majority, the overwhelming majority, think commuters are making the situation worse. We did a study of parking during when was it, November? So peak student time, peak working time. It wasn't, holiday season. And we found about 10% of the parking places in the garden quarter are taken up by commuters. So when you consider 1,000 and something of those car park spaces in the garden quarter are taken up by commuters, that's 100 and something. That's 100 and something places taken up by commuters. With a parking permit scheme, which reserves parking only to the households living here, that cuts that. That frees up 100 spaces for permanent residents in the garden quarter.
Ben,
Yes, question.
for our students, in terms of the consultation, because it's just one household, is there any way for students to be able to impact that and get them to have it where it's not just one household, it's each student?
No.
No.
One household.
One household
One
only.
household. So that household has to come to the same vote.
Okay.
Yeah. Good luck with that. Good luck to all residents with that,
Yeah.
to be honest with you. This is why we're here. Most of our residents do not think anything can be done. No, most of our residents disagree that nothing can be done to solve the parking problems in the garden quarter. And something to also bear in mind as well, something that always comes up when we talk to residents, not students, I grant you, although maybe actually students as well. Most of us do not have more than one car in their household. When it comes to parking permit schemes, and I'll give you the detail in a moment, when it comes to parking permit schemes, it is often one car per household, and anything left over, first come, first served. And there is a sort of priority system later. So we did, just to reiterate some of the data I mentioned before, we did our own survey via the Highways Department in Cheshire West, your local council. We did a survey looking at people who park from 7 a.m. till 6 p.m. We found more than a third of the spaces were occupied by cars all day. So that's people, they haven't moved their car 7 a.m., they haven't moved their car 10, 3 p.m. and 6 p.m. And the chances of them, look, we do have people who work nights, I get that. But the chances are most of that third are not working nights. Most of that third are leaving their car and not using it. Every household has every right to do that. Every household has every right to do that. But when we have a problem with parking supply, I think maybe we need to do something differently. And to reiterate the other data I made, 12% of the spaces were taken up by cars who were probably commuters, visitors, tourists, we don't know. That was from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. And then 4% of spaces were taken up by people from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. What's that? Students popping in for their lectures, coming extremely late. Who knows? Who knows? In the city of Chester, parking permit schemes are already being rolled out. So if you know where Newtown is, which is just to the right of the railway station when you're walking up to Exton Park campus, and when you got surrounding tramways as well, those who live there, we already have parking permit schemes. It's already happening. The free-for-all area in the city of Chester right now, it's the garden quarter. It's the Garden Quarter and the Garden Quarter alone. All right. So to be honest with you, every time there's an excess demand, excess need for people to park, and people want to get off and not pay anything, where would they go? They'd go here. They go in the Garden Quarter, which already has half of the population that's students, with some leaving their cars all year round. So we already have an excess demand, which gets worse during tourist and visitor season. When you ask people in the audience in the meetings we have, most are in favour of the parking permit scheme. But I've just got to emphasise this. Look, people who attend meetings don't represent the wider audience. This is why we're putting it to a vote. This is why we're putting it to a referendum, so to speak. We're going to talk about waste recycling in a minute. On parking, when we ask the residents, when we talk about the parking permit scheme, it's pretty mixed. There's going to be winners and losers here. There are going to be losers. There's no one size fits all. You have one resident in favour of residents parking as the road I live in is used on a daily basis by people parking cars, while at the university. I also think the university should provide more parking on campus for students while they're attending lectures, etc. That's up for the university to do. I can't really comment on that. I'll be concerned about the cost to residents of this scheme and whether we'll lose spaces to allow for passing places. That's always a potential. And here's something as well in yellow, if you can actually read that, if you can zoom in. There are many community groups, such as the free churches we have. We have St. Thomas over there. We have Northgate over there. We have the Methodist one on Garden Lane. Scout group. They all bring people into the quarter, but they don't live in the quarter. Where are they going to park? Something to bear in mind if and when we go down the route of a parking permit scheme. There's going to be losers here, or we find exemptions to the rule. As a one-car family would welcome a scheme and a restriction on commuter traffic, however, we would want to know about access arrangement for visitors, because people do visit. Parents visit students. Where are they going to park? Something to bear in mind, something for us to think about when we get to that. And I just want to say to you, reassure you who are listening, as councillors, as council officers who are not here, we are very aware of this. And we want to make sure when we get this policy through, if residents give majority approval to it, we get it right. We get it as accommodating as possible, okay? We'll just ignore waste for a minute. So look, a parking permit scheme, there are 2,000 households in the Garden Quarter, and we've worked out a parking permit scheme would apply to households that have curbside parking. So if you live on Walpole Street without the driveways, if you live on Vernon Road, Catherine Street, Bouverie Street, Garden Lane, those types of roads, you probably know what I mean. Terrace Street, Sydney Road, Cheney Road. Give me any others that maybe forgotten. What? Chichester. Or Chichester, as some locals call it. Yeah, Chichester or Chichester. Lawn Street, West Lawn Street, which may need to be one way one day. Yeah, we've said Bouverie. All those kinds of streets. Those are the streets that would be having the vote on this parking permit scheme. And it's those streets that would, if the scheme passes, would be excluding visitor traffic, save for residents only. The only people who will be able to park, if we went for that parking permit scheme, are residents. And we've worked out that means around about 1,000 residents have the vote. Will have the vote for this. Now, this is what the presentation I put to residents. This is not, I suppose, intended for students who are watching online, but nevertheless, I want you to consider a few things. So there's something that really got us thinking about this permit scheme, and it was something that your Vice-Chancellor did at a residents' conference a few months ago, not in the Garden Quarter, but at Chester Racecourse. And she said, quite off the cuff, but nevertheless it was said, that it is her desire to charge for students and staff to park on Exton Road campus. Now, if that happens, if that goes ahead, that only puts an extra pressure on the free-for-all parking spaces that are in the Garden Quarter. We know that will happen. Most people want a free lunch. Most people want to park for free. So, frankly, I think this vote needs to happen, and I think the residents need to have a say on it, and I would perhaps encourage them to maybe vote for it if that happens. Now, we've asked the university on this. I know university staff have challenged their bosses on this, and it seems as though it's not going ahead anytime soon. charging for staff and students to park on campus. But when I've asked at meetings with university staff, they've said, can't rule it out. It might come in the future. Something to bear in mind there. When we also look at this parking permit scheme, we need to just consider what community groups, businesses in the area need. We do garden social, for instance. We're hoping for additional wait times to maybe, or rather the residents around the garden social who are very supportive of the garden social cafe are hoping for longer wait times, grace period, so people can go in and have a coffee. I think that makes sense because the garden social is a blooming good cafe. We've got to go support it and see what it does. Now, the parking permit scheme, to reiterate, here's what you need to know. The consultation, the referendum in inverted commas, is coming at the end of September from the start of October and will last 6 weeks. 6 weeks. Every household in the area that will be affected, i.e. every household in the area that the scheme will apply to, those on-street parking streets, will partake in the survey. If you live in a flat, if you live in tramways, if you live in Tudor House, no, you're not going to have a vote. But if you live on those streets, yes, you will. And that's around about 1,000 households of, what was the overall number here at the start? 2,000 households. So half of the garden quarter will be having a say on this. A lot of them are students. And to get this vote through, to get it recognised, it requires turnout. It requires turnout. Now, as councillors, we were elected on a turnout, or what was it, a third? 30-something%. Okay. The students union are elected on a turnout of not as much as that. Okay. When it comes to issues like this, as council, we think there should be a minimum turnout level, and we're going to do that. Okay. And if more than a third of households turn out, then it's a simple majority. But if less than a third of households turn out, if only 10% of you, if only 100 households out of a total of 1,000 of you turn out, then to get this policy through, 80% of you need to be in favour of it. It's an interesting twist on democracy, I think, but it's a possible way to go. So that covers parking permit schemes. We're going to be looking at that. We're considering that. With consultation will be from the end of September, going through October. We initially wanted to do it in May to get it out of the way quickly because frankly, residents have been wanting this for decades. Councillors in time gone by have tried to push it through and have been unsuccessful. Now is our time to give it a go and see what we can get from it. That concludes parking permit schemes. What about waste and recycling? Waste and recycling. Leaving boxes out all week round. Well, you may have heard of something called a public space protection order. If you're ever out, coming from the train station, coming into the city of Chester, and you're drinking alcohol outside, you're not allowed to do that. PSPO bans that, and you're subject, if you're caught by a cop or someone else, you're subject to an instant fine. Okay? We think that sort of stuff should be applied in the garden quarter, but to the leaving of bins and boxes long out after collection day. If your bins and boxes are left out on, a Friday, and your collection is on a Tuesday, congratulations, you've just been fined. I think that's the way to go about things when it comes to waste and recycling, because there are too many boxes, there's too much waste out in the garden quarter, and I think we need to do something about that. Something else we're doing is we're hiring. The council has the money now, and the university's part funding it, I believe. The hiring of two. The union, sorry, very, very different there. The university's union is the hiring 2 university student reps. Do you want to come to free and give away or not? No. Everyone's shy here today.
Alice and Daisy.
Alice and Daisy. Yeah. We're hiring 2 new reps to basically encourage or promote better recycling, the better putting out of bins and boxes and bags. Okay? Because I think, look, all of you who are students, you're coming from around the country. You're coming from Yorkshire, you're coming from the south for some reason, you're coming from the rest of the north. You're all over, and you come with different recycling regimes. Cheshire West is different. So we need reps to promote understanding, to promote what is the right way to do it, so we're all better understanding it. Because I tell you this, though we have a canal running through the garden quarter, there is a rat problem all for other reasons in the garden quarter. I think we need to think about that and why that's happening. So, public space protection order we're looking at introducing in the garden quarter for the leaving out of boxes and bags long after collection day. Union reps to help encourage better recycling and understanding of how to recycle in the city of Chester. And we're also looking at this. Right now, you get your waste collected every 2 weeks. the waste, not your recycling. You get your waste collected every 2 weeks. In a place like the Garden Quarter, where half of them are students, where frankly, not as many people are recycling, I think it's fair to say the rate of recycling in the Garden Quarter is one of the lowest in the city, if not the whole of Cheshire. I think you need a bit of extra help. So I'm delighted to say that the council has secured the money and the funding and the investment to get an additional bin collection service. That'll be starting sometime in the future. When's it starting? Don't know yet. With the council, it could take 10 years before this gets installed. I doubt it, but never say never to long waits. We are getting an additional waste collection service. What are we calling it? Saturday stopper? Saturday server? Something like that, a Saturday stopper. And put bluntly, this is what you guys need. You need additional waste collection services. You need to know how to recycle. And to be honest with you, if you don't do any of that, you need to be fined. Okay? Because we can't have this in the Garden Quarter at the end of the day. That, I think, pretty much summarises it. So, thank you for listening. Can we turn it on?
Thank you so much, Ben, for your presentation. I want to stress to everyone, please look at this petition, look at this consultation, please put your word to it because it's really important for students to do so. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the students who actually turned up?
Can you bring back fish?
The fish? Which fish?
Plastic fish.
Plastic fish.
There's plastic on the floor. Now when the fish is gone, there's more plastic on the floor.
This was on campus. It was
It
a
was
big wire metal fish that people deliberately could fill it with plastic and remove it.
Yeah.
Was that uni provided?
Uni provided that one, but there's nothing stopping a similar thing going on
Oh, you get on in the middle of town.
by the Garden Lane.
Could you show us how it looked like?
Around the area.
Yeah, we can.
Well, what did it do? It was just a
Oh,
nice
people
way
just
to
enjoy feeding the fish.
It was just like a bin.
Oh, it was a gimmick.
Yeah, it was like a bin, but it was shaped like a fish, and people could put.
He's just throwing the
Rubbish
fish
in it.
out.
It's where
Yeah.
public areas are, so it's a useful way of like.
Each one in the park.
Yeah, exactly.
We did it here as well. Well, how big were they?
Quite.
It was quite
Yeah, it was quite
massive. So maybe not 10. Maybe 2 or 3. I mean, we could.
Sculpture.
Yeah, okay, we could fund that.
Movies.
Moving on.